Enter the Gungeon is a roguelike shooter with randomized maps and items, an incredible number of weapons and power-ups, and an over-the-top theme that makes sure you don't forget you are playing a shooter game, with guns and a lot of bullets. Today I'll be taking a look at the game and giving my initial thoughts and opinions on what this game has to offer. The style of the game has a very casual and light-hearted feel, but this feel is contrasted with the intensity and slight eeriness of some aspects of the game. For example, the dialogue and item descriptions are very humorous, some of the guns are kinda meant to be jokes, and a large handful of enemies look borderline cute, but at the same time you can't take it too casually because of some of the mysterious imagery, the barrage of bullets you're constantly receiving, and some just creepy looking bosses. I think the developers did a good job at making sure that this unserious tone wasn't the main attraction of the game. I think if a game is oversaturated with this funny / over-the-top feel so much so that it changes gameplay, then it can feel a bit like the developers aren't even taking it seriously. This isn't the case in Enter the Gungeon. It has a solid engine and very strict core gameplay mechanics. What I mean by this is, the game is hard. There are a few things that you can get to boost your health over this amount, but the max health is only 6 hits. And if I didn't already say this, there are a lot of bullets in this game. You have to constantly be on your feet, multitasking, dodging bullets, and aiming at the same time. I think this is why that unserious tone doesn't affect my perception on the actual gameplay, because I can't exactly think about it while I'm trying not to die. It's only prominent when you're looking through your inventory and seeing the descriptions of weapons, or just in a place where there are no enemies currently. I'm glad they were able to add this funny tone into the game though. I've got no doubts that it would work without it, but I still found myself laughing at some of the ridiculous weapons and enemies. A few weeks ago, I did a review on Hollow Knight. One thing I mentioned there was that the combat was focused much more around the enemies and their attacks rather than the attacks that you have at hand. Although there are a lot of enemies in Enter the Gungeon, it is on the different side of the spectrum when it comes to combat. There are a lot of guns that you have access to. I mean, that's a given because the name of the game is a pun about guns, but with the time I played, I barely scratched the surface when it comes to unlocking and using new weapons. After a quick Google search, I found that there are 243 weapons in the game. That's not even to include all of the items that boost your weapon stats or even the synergies of weapons and items. Basically, synergies change how a weapon behaves if you have another specific weapon or item equipped. A quick example of one would be the bionic leg and the machine pistol. If you have both equipped, then the machine pistol will shoot bullets with an electricity effect. Like I said before, there are a ton of enemies in the game, but there are only so many ways that they can shoot bullets without being completely overpowered. Most of the bullets your enemies shoot move around the speed that you can walk, with some exceptions, but you're also equipped with a dodge roll that makes you completely invulnerable while you're in the air. That way there is a little bit of flexibility with how insane the enemies are, but at the same time, there are only so many shapes enemies can shoot bullets in. No doubt the developers had to do a lot of thinking outside the box to make things like wizards that shoot bullets in spinning shapes, birds that spit up bullet eggs that then hatch into random spreads of more bullets, and bats that fly around getting an angle on you so that they can turn into a bullet and shoot themselves at you, but still, they all have to be dodgeable by this dodge roll or just by moving your character. That being said, the sheer number of guns you can get in this game gives you so many playstyles that change the game with each weapon, and that eliminates most of the boring gameplay. This is where the absurd and over-the-top weapons really help gameplay out. There aren't many games where you can get a planet launcher that slowly becomes more powerful by shooting larger planets the more you fire it. Not to mention the planets start orbiting you, and if you walk near an enemy, the planets will smash into them. This is just one of the 243. One other thing is, the game doesn't give you the stats of your guns and items when you open your inventory. And honestly, I really like that. When it comes to roguelike games, or just games in general, I'm that person who reads every single stat of a weapon because I feel like I won't understand the weapon until I do. And when you take those stats away from me, I'm actually kind of relieved because all I have to do is start playing with the weapon to understand. And I know that's the only way to figure it out. It keeps things fun and much less overly complex for players like me. Like I said before, there are a lot of weapons. Paired with the game's procedural map generation, there are so many possibilities for each playthrough. It almost seemed like the gameplay was based around making sure that no two playthroughs were the exact same. Of course, it seems like the rooms were designed beforehand, but they're laid out in a different pattern and shape every single floor. Not just the layout of the floor, but the bosses too. This doesn't happen on every floor, but the ones that I got to randomly picked from 3 bosses. So it's very unlikely you'll have the exact same combination of bosses across the floors. There's even randomization in the weapons that are in the shops and chests. The playstyles from the different weapons that you use to go through these completely randomized levels in are randomized. I think it's safe to say that you'll probably never have the same playthrough twice. I'm always eager to hop back into the Gungeon because I don't know what weapons I'll get next, and I'm excited to find out. Despite all of this randomization, there are still lots of things that keep you grounded. In your home base, aka the Breach, there's a place where you can spend a currency to unlock new weapons and items so that they will start to spawn in the Gungeon. You can also choose between starting classes so that you can start yourself off with a playstyle that you find the most fitting. So not everything is completely random and overwhelming from the beginning. You solely have to progress to unlock a larger selection of weapons and items, and that gives you time to get used to the weapons that you currently have unlocked, then start moving on. As well as the different characters making sure that you actually like the weapon that you start out with. You might think that this randomization would make things unbalanced, but that's kind of the fun in it. You have no idea if you'll get your favorite weapon or a weapon that you hate to use. You're always rolling the dice every time you play. But nothing is so overpowered or underpowered to the point where you either beat the game immediately or lose the game immediately. This randomization keeps players wanting to come back to the game and try again, but they still somewhat know what to expect. I want to start this section by saying, I love the music in this game. The tone of the music really fits the game's theme, but what I think it doesn't fit is the actual gameplay itself. As much as you'd think that an intense driving synth lead over heavy drums would fit this gameplay, it kind of mixes very strangely with the sound effects in the game. After playing the game without the music on, I realized something. All of the sounds kind of drown out in the music, and you're kind of missing the auditory beats of the gameplay. To elaborate on this, I really like the sound effects of the game. Without the music, you can hear every little detail of what's happening. You can hear enemies' deaths more clearly, the sound of a table flipping over is so much larger and broader, and even when there's silence and you can only hear footsteps of you and your enemies echoing in the room, that silence is so impactful because it makes the next gunshot feel surprising and abrupt. It almost makes it more intense in my opinion. Sounds that were small when the music was on become large and significant when the music is off. It makes the game feel more like an adventure game than an arcade game. Not to mention that when you're done with a fight, everything is silent, where if you had the music on it would still keep playing for a while, kind of destroying the audio pacing of the gameplay. Even though I like the music off when I played, there's still some spots where I think music would be very fitting. Those places being in the shop and during boss fights, because of how empty those places feel without it. And some people might even prefer that non-stop arcade feel instead of the tactical adventure feel while they're playing. I found all of this really interesting, and if there are any starting developers out there, I think Enter the Gungeon is a great example of how music can completely change the feel of your game. I have to be honest, the game didn't really catch my eye when I first tried it out. Though the more I played, the more I kept wanting to hop back in and try again. The game has a very addictive nature due to its randomness and satisfying mechanics, yet it still gives you a sense of progression because of the lore and unlocks. I'll definitely be playing more of this when I get the chance. At that, I do recommend the game. I think you have to play it for a few hours to get into it, but once you do, it's really fun. I'll be linking the Steam store page in the description. That's all for now, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Also, I passed 400 subscribers very recently, and I want to thank everyone who decided to subscribe and continue watching these videos. I know 400 doesn't sound like a lot compared to other channels, but it's more than I thought I'd get on this channel when I started it, so thank you guys. I appreciate the support a lot. If there's any other types of videos you would like to see besides these reviews and video essays, please tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your suggestions and try something new. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video.